Digital capabilities. If we start talking about digital transformation, it's logic that we start talking about creating the capability of being digital. Your team, your company, your organization should be capable of being digital in a sustainable way, not just as a one-shot project, one initiative, but a new way of working from a digital perspective. My name is Breno Lima Ribeiro. I'm a consultant worldwide for over 13 years, and I'm going to talk about three of the digital capabilities I believe you could start from. Of course, this is a topic where we have much more to teach and to learn, but now I'm going to try to put you at least one step closer your digital transformation, showing you the different perspectives you should take into consideration to achieve this. After that, you'll be able to go further in the subject it's more relevant for you. The first digital capability is the digital development. And I try to put all in the sequence that makes sense from a step-by-step perspective, process perspective, a journey perspective. And in my point of view, based on my experience, the first step is to develop the development digital capability. Development meaning developing digital products, technologies, digital increments, technological increments on your current digital products if you have already one, or creating really the capability of creating new products, creating the technology you don't have yet in place. This development capability comes alongside with many surrounding practices. The first one, agile development. Agility is big enough to talk about. We have the business agility, we have the mindset, the practices, but I want to focus now only in the agile way of developing new technologies, new products, digital products. We have two different, actually have more, but I'm going to touch only two of them, two different types of problems. One, the complicated problems, where it's difficult to implement, but we know how to do this. For example, building a bridge or building a house. It's not easy to build a house, but we know the standards. It's a well-known kind of project. This is complicated. For this kind of projects, you can indeed use a more traditional project management structure, because you can plan everything in advance with a high level of confidence that you will achieve that result, the expected result. It almost stopped being a project and start being a process, a production process. So it's something in the middle of between a reproducible process or really a project, okay? And then we have another type of problem that are the complex problems. For the complex problems, you don't have a clear relationship between cause and effect. For example, the pandemics, we didn't know exactly what would work better or not to mitigate the effects of the pandemic. So we needed to start trying the use of mask, trying the isolation, which level of isolation would be enough to stop the dissemination of the pandemics. For sure, we had a lot of knowledge in different parts from different perspectives, showing how to do this, how to do that, a lot of studies, but it was still uncertain for us what would work better. So the complex problems are the main, the key difficulties and the key challenge in the digital transformation, because the technology is changing constantly. You have new things constantly. And because we have new technologies, you have new behaviors of our customers and users and citizens. So we need to keep trying, experiencing, and learning. And because of that, agility is the greatest tool you have to develop new products, because you develop in small pieces, in small increments, with low risk, and bringing the positive impact, bringing the benefit for the customer constantly. The smaller it is, it doesn't matter. You are delivering benefits constantly. So this is the first thing, the agile development work. Secondly, DevOps. DevOps in the agile development structure, DevOps meaning development and operations. DevOps is about bringing together and shortening the relationship between development and operations. Because, see, we don't develop in the development cycle only products, only technologies. We need to develop something that will be operational in the future. So it doesn't work only programming as we used to do before, and then in a given point we deliver everything. We need to get close, as we are delivering constantly, we need to get close to the operational teams, being that first, infrastructure teams, people who will operate technically, make sure that that piece of software, that digital product, it's up and running, has the right performance. You see, you need to get close to the infrastructure team to make sure you develop something that is sustainable. And operations, secondly, from a process perspective, you have supply chain teams who will use your products. You have operations teams who use your products. You have support teams who will use your product. So DevOps is about getting closer, shortening this relationship between operations and development. Of course, just as Agile, if we go deeper in DevOps structure and practices, we have many other things that we could explore to make this relationship better and more automatic and more digital. But one of them, the last one to mention here that I think worth mentioning, is the continuous integration and continuous delivery. When it comes to having agile teams, you are constantly delivering. You are constantly producing new valuable things. But it doesn't worth producing new valuable things if you cannot put this in production frequently. I saw companies, for example, where the release window just happened from 3 to 3 months. And this after huge improvements. So what is the matter of constantly producing new increments if you cannot put this in production and give the access to the customer? As we're going to see later in the end of the presentation, delivering faster, delivering smaller increments constantly has a lower risk than producing a huge amount of code and delivering it in production at once. But we're going to talk more about this in the end of the presentation. I don't want to spoil anything here. So let's continue. Third point, site reliability engineering. In my journey here in Belgium, I rarely see people who knows what site reliability engineering is. So I feel this is an opportunity to share this knowledge with you. SRE, or Site Reliability Engineering, it's a methodology or a practice created and maintained by Google. Google used this for their technological operations. If you Google Site Reliability Engineering, you're going to find all the books for free. You can download and study, and it's not an extensive set of books with many pages. No, it's completely feasible, the study of this. Site reliability engineering, it's about constructing reliable products, digital products. And reliable doesn't mean unbeatable, doesn't mean that it will never fail. It means that once it fails, we will reduce the probability of failure. Once it fails, we will be able to quickly recover from this failure. So we're going to see more in details in the future, but we have two perspectives here, the development perspective and the operational perspective. From the development perspective, you can develop an architecture, a development architecture, a digital architecture more reliable. For example, using microservices. Microservices, let's take the history. Before you had a monolithic, you had a block of code that was our software. When we had to change this, we changed one piece, and you couldn't change one piece. When you changed it, you had a lot of dependencies, and the probability of failure was high. With the microservice, you split this huge block in smaller blocks, in smaller pieces of software that communicates with each other. So you can easily change one piece of software without impacting the whole chain. This is just to summarize what the microservices structure, microservices architecture is about. But if you are curious, you have a lot of types of microservices you can create to create more sustainability and reliability on your site. The next one is service management. But service management in development, of course. So we said that we are developing digital capabilities. We are developing digital products. But how does this project will be operated in the end? Who will operate them? The weaknesses of the software, who will deal with them? How can we ensure? In ITIL, we used to say that a value is created when we have utility and warranty. The software is being useful, great. The development team made a useful software, but we need to have warranties that the software is going to work when I need. It doesn't make sense to have an electric car without a recharging station, for example. So you see that the development team developed an electric car, but in operations, when I'm going to operate the car, I need a recharging structure. So the development team must develop the product, a useful product, and a product with warranty. When it comes to an organization, you need to develop, yes, the software, but you also need to think about which are the people structure you need to support that. Who will execute and operate that machine? Imagine that you have a supply chain team who will operate and set the parameters of the software. You need to think about this. Otherwise, you are creating just technology and not solution for the problems. So service management in this phase, I brought in this phase to show you that you don't produce only technologies. You need to produce the full solution which comes with product, people, and processes. Okay? Which are the processes, for example, to troubleshoot an error? And the error will come. Every system fails. What is going to happen when it fails? Who will execute this? Who will troubleshoot? And if I need to escalate. So we need to think about this in this phase of the development. Following, we have the project and program management. Oh, but aren't we agile? If we are agile, we don't need project management, traditional project management. Look, we have different cultures, and it's really, really important for us to understand that everything I'm saying here and everything you hear out there about agility, service management, governance, they are tools to achieve an objective. One of the main errors I see people doing in agility is to copy the so-called Spotify model. what we are copying from Spotify? Squads, tribes, chapters, but what we should be copying from Spotify? The fact that they developed something that made sense for them. This is what we should be copying from them. We must use those tools, those different tools, to create a model that makes sense to our organizations. I saw organizations, I have clients, startups, where it makes sense to have everything controlled by Kanban. We created a chain of Kanbans where it flows very well. Each team's demands to each other, they are able to receive and to demand, and this creates a chain, and it works very well. In other companies, I see that, for example, when you need to release a new technology and you have a deadline, it's nice to have a program manager in a hybrid situation coordinating with the different agile teams. So this is a practice, a valid practice. And remember that I said, complicated work, you don't need to iterate. You can plan a lot of things in advance because it's almost as a process. You know the results, you know the cause and effect. So face everything I'm talking about here and everything you hear out there as tools, not as a silver bullet, not as the solution for all your problems. Okay? Going to the next digital capability, digital operations. So we started developing, constructing, and now we're gonna operate. And first, why I'm bringing in this sequence? Based on my experience going through from 10 different industries, from startups to huge mega organizations, what I see is that it usually doesn't make sense to start talking about operations without having the initial steps more mature for development. Since from startups until huge companies, this is a standard I've seen. In Euroclear, for example, one of the companies I worked for when I arrived in Belgium, I was invited to organize the operations of a new digital product called STP, Straight-Through Processing. When I arrived, all the development team were already there because it takes time to develop the MVP. And when I joined, the operational structure, and see, Euroclear is a huge company, the operational team was small for that product. So you see that they created a huge development structure and then they started smaller with the operations. And the same happened in a unicorn I worked for in Portugal called Farfetch. The same happens in the startups I advise in Brazil, etc. So the next point here is the operational, the digital operations. And once more, I bring here the service management. I start through the service management. Actually, service management is so wide that they are part of the whole chain. And I could make a presentation only about service management, and I would cover all of those things. But I want to show you what is the service management perspective from within this chain. And here in operations, where in development we were focused on developing a service, product, people, processes, here we are focused on operating this. And then you have many practices. For example, the service level management. Service level could be also called the quality level. And you know, quality is relative. Quality for you might be one thing and for me might be another. For example, for one company such as Euroclear, Microsoft Service Level as a provider might need to provide a 99.99% availability of their servers, might provide a 24/7 support. But for a small startup, maybe they don't need that. So for them, quality is different. So service level is one of the service management practices. We need to monitor, manage this in operations. We need to provide the service catalog for the customer, because we are still and always developing our digital capabilities, right? Our digital products. And there are always something we don't cover or we didn't cover yet. Having a service catalog helps you to execute on behalf of the customer the actions that he's not able to do yet on the system. For example, at Proximus, my current customer in Belgium, we work in a project to automatize the change ownership process, where we change your line, your fixed line, your mobile line, etc., to another person. Meanwhile, while we develop an automatic solution for that, we have the support and operations teams executing this on behalf of the customer. So it's quite important. And even if you have a DevOps structure where development and operations are close, are near to each other, there are some procedures that it doesn't worth passing to the development team. Like, for example, if you have a blue screen on your laptop, you call a support team and they just say, okay, restart your computer. We don't need a developer that is expensive doing this. You see, and maybe it doesn't worth investigating why one customer had a blue screen once in a month. You see, once it starts coming to a more frequent situation, then yes, you can bring a developer to the discussion through the problem management. But you see, we need a service management structure to operate a digital product as a service that ensures the utility and the warranty. The utility was ensured by the development team, and the warranty is ensured by the service management team and the operations teams. Secondly, again, site reliability engineering. Once more, you see that everything is connected. When we were talking about development, we were talking about microservices, redundancy, reliability of the product, to fail less, and to, if possible, recover automatically. When you have, for example, a failover server, multiple servers across the globe, and then you can quickly rebalance, redirect the traffic. This is development. But in a given point, it's inevitable. The platform, the digital product will fail. And when it fails, we have in operations, in our digital operations capability, the capability of recovering fast. So site reliability engineering, it's about, it's something, this part of the site reliability engineering talks about instant recovery in a lean way, in an agile way. So when an incident happens, you must be ready, for example, with a list of people who can help quickly to recover in the middle of the night. What we used to call on-call, people on call, to ready to support the to support and to recover that from that situation as soon as possible. Another practice, really interesting, and it's more than a practice, a mindset of site reliability engineering for operations, is the post-mortem. When a huge incident occurs, you have you resolve this as soon as possible, for sure, but after that you set up a meeting to talk about what happened. This meeting must take place as soon as possible to take the fresh mind of people, the fresh memory of people, and we're gonna talk about what happened, what went well, where we had luck, and that went well, but it was not because we did this, we prepared for this, and it was a lucky situation. What we can do to improve next time. But more than a continuous improvement meeting, this is a learning session, Because you see, it's impossible, on one hand, it's impossible to have in a huge company one person or one team mastering everything. It's impossible. And even if you have one or two guys who knows really well the platform, but you depend a lot on those guys, you have a huge risk. And you can't have those guys present in all the projects. So you need to promote the learning of all people, of all teams. And this is what the postmortem is about. It's about learning. For sure, you raise improvement opportunities, but you need to make people learn. And this is why, for example, we publish the postmortem. We write the postmortem, improvement opportunity, what's happening, and we publish for people to read and to learn with this. And you promote that reading, right? In one of the companies I passed by, we use it to give a gift to the best postmortem article of the month, of the week, etc. So this is us, the executives, creating this culture of learning. And then I added one surprise or one different practice here that I used to call continuous automation. This is not stated usually in the best practices structures, but I wanted to bring this here because it's something I've been practicing, and it's very, very useful in operations. See, usually the automation capability it's restricted to development teams, but nowadays automation has becoming something so easy for everyone to use and to produce, with RPA, robotic process automations, with, for example, Power Automate from Microsoft or Google Apps Script from Google. Everybody nowadays, it's not uncommon to go to the finance team or supply chain team, and you have there people who program in Python, which is a simple solution to automatize a lot of the small work you have, the operational work you have. Because when you come to automatize through the platform, through the product, through the development team, you have a different level of complexity. But meanwhile, you can develop smaller automations in your operations team to facilitate, to relieve the workload, you see? And you have many tools to use this. One of the operational management positions I've already assumed, I've created exactly that. I started bringing the support engineers with knowledge about programming to start automatizing. And then we used the Pareto analysis to understand the first and most requested item of our service catalog, or the most common incident. And to do this, you need to have a service catalog, and then it brings us to the service management again. And we automatized this. And because of that, we reduced about 20% of the incidents with an in-house automation in the operational teams without having to ask the development team. So you see, this is a great opportunity. Your operational teams must not be only dependent on development team. You must be capable of doing your own simpler developments. What brings us to our last capability: risk, compliance, and governance. You will see this in a different sequence in the market: governance, risk, and compliance. But I brought it in this sequence for a reason. Everything, in my point of view, in my experience, it starts through risks. When you start growing as a company, if you are growing in an agile way, you are already taking the first step to mitigate risks. Because remember that I said, when you deliver one in the traditional project management structures, when you delivered a huge block that you've been constructing for 1 year and you deliver everything at once in the end, you have many risks. Risk of that product not being useful anymore. Delivering a useless product because everything changed and the necessity changed. You have the risk of everything failing because you have a monolithic structure that will receive a lot of changes in at once. So you have many risks. So if we start agile, if we start CI/CD, continuous deployment, continuous delivery, continuous integration, you have already from the start less risk, because you deliver a little bit and you test and you can roll back quickly. Or if it works, you can continue moving on. If you need to fix something that cannot be rolled back, the developers have already the what was developed fresh in their minds. If we are using SRE, we already mitigate risks because you create a microservices structure. If you have a DevOps structure, you are close to the operation, so you can quickly react to a project, to a failure. So you made the first start. As you grow, new risks start coming, and the risks that start coming are the triggers for compliance, for governance. Compliance, another risk I'm going to talk about. And actually, it's also the trigger for compliance, because when you take, for example, GDPR comes from a risk. The risk of processing a huge amount of citizen data, of end users data, of people's data. So as we are processing a lot of their data, we have the risk of a disruption, a data breach, an incorrect use of that data for personal reasons. So this risk increases, and then we need to start accomplishing GDPR, for example. So you see that everything starts from the risk, and we start having security risks, technological risks, because one of my clients, for example, started 10 years ago using Flash, and now Flash is not yet usable, right? It's deprecated. No one uses Flashes anymore. It was replaced by HTML5 and JavaScript, and they still use Flash. So suddenly, the core business might break down, and they may even bankrupt if they continue using Flash. So this is a risk, and it's just a risk because they are growing. Okay, the security risks, as you start processing more money, more incomes, more data, you start capturing the attention from people with bad intentions, from hackers, from criminals. So the risk increases, and then it brings us to the compliance. So as I said, the risk of data increases, and then you have GDPR. But for example, if you go public in the New York Stock Exchange market, for example, you need to comply with SOX. SOX is a legislation that came from a moment where companies started making up the numbers to make sure the stock price increases. So we needed to have a law to reduce the money laundering risk, the corruption risk. So if you already worked in a SOX project, you probably noticed that everything started from financial risks I want to mitigate and control objectives. Things I'm going to control to mitigate, or if possible, eliminate. Rarely this is possible unless you don't do anything. We have risk in everything we do, but you start creating controls to mitigate, to counterbalance that level of risk. So this control must be as big as the risk is to counterbalance. So many legislations starts popping up as you grow, like PCI for credit cards, when you accept payments for credit cards. So you need to make sure it happens. And then it brings us to the solution for risks and compliance subject, which is the governance. Governance is about making sure that the resources are used in a correct way. And then we have resources such as data, it's an asset, financial assets, etc. Governance will produce a set of controls and control objectives to make sure that we are using correctly, that the rules and the policies are being followed, and there are rules. Because imagine, for example, you have a company where the CIO or the CFO has the power to select a supplier, define the price, negotiate the price, approve the purchase for his brother, for example. If he is the owner of the company and he wants to do this, it's his money. But if we have a public company, we cannot allow that. And how do we allow that in a company with dozens of people, with thousands, hundreds of thousands of people sometimes? Through governance. You start setting policies with rules and controls to make sure that those rules are really in place. And for this, you need to use technology. For example, when you have a purchase process, this is in a system like SAP or another ERP. If you add in this process, in this technology, a blocking point where it says, okay, you can, that's what we call segregation of duties, right? You can propose a purchase, but you cannot approve. This must be approved by another person. This is segregation of duties. Just by doing this, you reduce the risk of corruption. You see, these are the controls we implement to reduce the risks. And we need to do this through the technology. This is why I brought governance as well as a digital capability. As you grow technologically, you must have the capability of governing, controlling, and auditing, and prove that you have control over this whole complexity. And you do this through the governance, control objectives, and then audit processes that audit those controls in frequently, with a given frequency. You need to do this for external auditors. You need to do this for internal purposes, because as a CEO, you don't control everything that everyone is doing. So you need to audit them, to request independent people to audit them, reducing the chances of corruption, money laundering, etc. And for security reasons, because you have to have security controls to reduce the security risks, and you need to audit to make sure that those controls are working. You see? So everything is connected here. And this is why risk, compliance and governance, digital development and digital operations creates a cycle full of interactions. So you have the risk and compliance and governance producing control objectives, and you have the digital development by one hand ensuring that the development has segregation of duties, has controls, so that one person cannot, for example, deliver a piece of software that sends 1 cent from each transaction to a special account. You see, you need to prevent that through the development cycle. So the governance produces the control objectives, and the development teams gives back what? Control assurance, assuring that the development process has the controls implemented, and by the other hand, that the softwares that are developed, the technologies that are developed, has those controls, like the segregation of duties we talked about. And then you have the digital development delivering increments to operations and receiving back reliability learning from the postmortems, from the instance that happens in production. We learn about where are our vulnerabilities, our continuity risks, when we learn and we work with the operations team. And the operational team by its turn, does the same. They receive from governance the control objectives, operational controls, and they ensure that, or assure that set of controls are in place, processually speaking, because they are operating everything. So this was the structure I wanted to bring to you about 3 digital capabilities you must take into consideration to lead the digital transformation. Once more, digital transformation is about changing the way of working. It's not one project. It's a continuous evolution and learning. It's changing your mindsets for a learning mindset. From now on, you start just learning and adapting. So you need to have a completely different way of working, not just one-shot initiative. And to finalize, I brought here a phrase I used to say that is very valid for the Belgian context, because I've seen Belgian companies trying to go agile in a way, not agile way, in a not agile way. They want a big bang implementation of agile frameworks, thinking that this will make the company agile. And this is not true. One of the most agile companies I worked with were hierarchical. They didn't have Scrum Masters, they didn't have chapters or squads, and they were really agile. Because as I used to say, a company with the agile mindset works way better than and a hierarchical structure works way better than a company with an agile architecture and chapters and squads, but a hierarchical mindset. So one of the best companies, the most agile companies I worked for was hierarchical, but had the agile mindset. The managers empowered the people. Everybody had their voices. The OKRs were there to implement, to set the direction. People had autonomy to work on their solutions. So this is what agility is about. And never forget, everything I showed here, it's a set of tools. You need to add those tools to your toolbox to resolve problems. If you start discussing, oh, this is agile, this is not agile, this is a Scrum, this is not a Scrum, you are focused on the tool. You see, you need to focus on the problem. If they say, this is not a Scrum, okay, step back. Is this resolving the problem? So I don't care if this is a Scrum or not. This is called Scrum or Kanban. If you created your own way of working, these practices are just shortcuts. But Spotify, for example, created their own way of working, and it works for a given period. So you can create your way of working or use a shortcut of a set of tools that are already in place to resolve your problem, but never use this as the focus. My focus is to implement agile. No, my focus is to deliver faster. My focus is to deliver value constantly. And agile is has a set of tools. Agile service management governance has a set of tools for me to use as my culture it's ready to absorb. That was all for me. Thank you very, very much. I will leave all my contact, my LinkedIn on the presentation. Connect to me if you want to exchange ideas. I live in Brussels. If you want to exchange ideas, to discuss about management practice, governance practice, this is my passion, and I will be glad to join and to talk about this with you. If you have questions, please let me know. I'll be really, really happy to answer all of them. Okay? Thank you very much.